Insights from the Transcript. Introduction. Imagine you are in the kitchen. You have a tasty recipe, but the words are hard to understand. Or maybe you ate something so good, and you want to find the right words to say how special it is. This feeling, wanting to know more about the world with words, is very human. It's not just about following steps. It's about finding new tastes, new places, and new ways to share happy times. It is about learning and getting better, which is simple but important. This book, Insights from the Transcript, starts from a moment like this, when we learn and find things together. It comes from a good talk, a written record of ideas shared. Think of this record like a picture, a moment when thoughts and feelings were shared easily. In this simple talk, there are hidden treasures, important ideas that are good to learn about. Our trip in this book is to find and understand these main ideas from the written record. To help us on this trip, we will look at something we call a key theme. What is a key theme? Think of it like the main tune in a song. You remember that tune. It makes the song special. It's what the song keeps coming back to. In a talk or writing, a key theme is a main idea or message that shows up many times. It is the heart of what people are talking about. It is the main point they want to make. These themes are important because they help us see past just the words and understand what they really mean. They show what is truly important to the people talking. They help us understand their message better. In this book, we will find these important key themes from the written record and show why they matter. As we look at the summary of the written record, several important key themes appear. Each one gives a different view and a good idea. One of the biggest themes we found is how learning English and cooking are linked. It's not just about learning words. It's about how knowing English can open up a whole new world of food. You can read recipes from other countries with confidence. You can understand how to cook things well. You can learn many new food words. Imagine making a dish from a country you always wanted to visit just because you understood the recipe. This theme shows how language can help you learn new skills and see more of the world. Another important key theme we found is about understanding recipes. It's about going from just reading words to really knowing the steps and why they are done. This theme is about feeling strong. It's about having the confidence to follow instructions right and make something tasty. It's about making cooking easy and fun for everyone, no matter if they cooked before. When you understand a recipe, you are not just following. You are creating. Finally, a nice and useful theme in the written record is how to talk about food. This theme wants us to not only enjoy how food tastes and feels, but also to be able to describe it. Think of becoming a food expert with your words. It's about noticing small differences in taste. It's about how food feels in your mouth. It's about being able to share that feeling with others. Being able to talk about what you sense makes you enjoy food more. It makes you feel closer to the people you eat with. These themes, learning English for cooking, understanding recipes, and talking about food, often work together. They make your experience better and more enjoyable. By looking at these key themes, you will understand better how language and everyday things, like cooking, are nicely connected. You will find useful ways to get better at English, especially for cooking. You will learn new ways to enjoy and talk about food with confidence. You will feel more excited and ready to explore the big and tasty world of cooking. Let's start and find the good ideas waiting for us in the written record. 1. Learning English for cooking. The kitchen, a place for making food and trying new things, can also help you learn English better. Think about a recipe. It's like a set of steps, a short story telling you how to mix foods to make something tasty. When we learn English, we don't just learn words. We get the keys to open many stories, especially about food. Imagine you see a recipe for the first time. If it's in a language you don't know well, It feels like a puzzle with missing parts. You might see words like sugar or flour. But the real magic is in the actions. What does it mean to sauté onions until they look see-through? How much is a pinch of salt? What does it mean to whisk eggs until they make stiff peaks? These are not just random words. They are the steps to make good food. Learning English changes these strange phrases into clear steps. Now, chop finely is something you can do. And simmer gently is a careful, slow way of cooking. Being able to follow these steps well means the difference between food you love and food that makes you wonder, what went wrong? This skill is a main idea. It comes from learning the central ideas that knowing language helps you do real things and have real experiences. English also gives you many words for food. Think about all the different ways to cook food. Bake, roast, grill, fry, steam, braise, poach. Each word means a different way to cook, a different feel, a different taste. And the foods themselves. English has many names for fruits, vegetables, spices, and herbs. Some of these might not have easy names in other languages. Learning these words is not just about knowing more words. It's about learning more about food from all over the world. You can find recipes for dishes you only dreamed of and understand every step. This is where the idea of learning new English words about food really makes sense. It's not just knowing the word for an apple. It's knowing the difference between lamb cooked slowly in liquid braised and steak cooked quickly in a hot pan seared. It's about understanding the special skill behind each one. But learning English for cooking is not just about following steps or knowing food names. It's also about being better at talking about food. Have you ever tasted something great and only said it was good? English gives you the tools to describe it better. You can go beyond simple words and learn to talk about tastes and textures with detail and style. Is the food sweet, sour, bitter, or salty? Is it smooth, crunchy, soft, or flaky? Does it smell nice, smoky, or fresh? The speaker in the text talks about sounding like a food expert when talking about tastes. This doesn't mean you have to be a chef. It means you can enjoy and share your own experiences more. Learning the right words helps you say how much you like a perfect avocado, the nice crunch of a pastry, or the many flavors in a slow-cooked stew. It makes enjoying food an active thing, not just something you watch happen. This deeper feeling, this ability to explain details, is another main idea. It's a central idea from the text that learning English helps you share your feelings and understand things better. Think about how it makes you feel and what you gain. It feels good to make a dish, especially one you learn to make by understanding English steps. It's a feeling of success, a real reward for your effort. But there's more. When you can talk about food in English, you join a global group of people. You can watch cooking shows from other countries and understand what they say. You can read food blogs and find new recipes from people everywhere. You might even talk to a chef, ask about their special dish, or share your cooking stories online. This feeling of connection, of being part of a larger group with the same interest, is very good. It makes cooking more than just something you do alone. It becomes something social and cultural. This part shows the main message of the text. Language is a bridge, connecting us to new knowledge, new skills, and new people. Let's look closer at how learning specific English cooking words helps make food better. It's not just knowing the word chop. It's knowing the difference between chopping, dicing, and mincing. Each makes pieces of food a different size, which changes how they cook and blend together. For example, if a recipe says to finely dice onions for a base flavor, and you roughly chop them instead, the onions will cook unevenly. Some might burn and others will stay hard, changing the nice base taste of the dish. Also, the difference between sautéing and pan frying is important. Sautéing means cooking quickly in a little fat over medium-high heat, often to soften vegetables or brown meat before more cooking. Pan frying means cooking in more fat over medium heat, usually to make it crispier. If a recipe says to sauté mushrooms until they let out liquid, but you pan fry them, they might get too oily and lose that nice soft but firm feel. The exact words in English cooking help you control things, which directly affects the final food. Think about baking. The difference between creaming butter and sugar, beating them until light and fluffy, and just mixing them is huge. Creaming adds air, which helps baked goods rise and become soft. If you just mix them, the texture will be heavy. Knowing words like folding ingredients together, gently mixing a lighter mix into a heavier one without making it flat versus stirring, mixing more strongly is very important for delicate batters like those for soufflés or mousses. Being able to understand these steps correctly, thanks to knowing English cooking words, means the baker can reliably make that food the way it's supposed to be. It's about understanding the science and art behind each step, and English gives you the exact words to do it. This understanding, this ability to get a desired result with exact words, is a core part of the main idea, the detailed look at central ideas and concepts from the text. Now, let's explore the most important feelings or experiences a learner gets from being able to talk about food and follow recipes in English, beyond just making the food. One of the biggest benefits is feeling more confident. Making a dish that was once hard because of language problems is very empowering. It's a personal win that goes beyond the kitchen. This new confidence can spread to other parts of your life, helping you try new things. There's also a deep feeling of connection and respect for other cultures. Food is something everyone understands, but the ways we cook and talk about it are very cultural. By learning English cooking words, you get a look into cultures that created these dishes and ways of cooking. You start to understand the history, the traditions, and the stories behind the food. This builds understanding and a wider view of the world. Imagine tasting a perfectly seasoned curry. In your own language, you might say it's spicy. But in English, you can learn to say if it's hot, sharp, fiery, or a little spicy. You can describe the umami taste, a concept often talked about by food lovers, or the mouthfeel of a dish. Being able to explain your taste experience is not just about impressing others. It's about enjoying it more yourself. It's like learning to see in color after only seeing in black and white. You start to notice more, enjoy more, understand more. This better sense of taste and the joy of sharing it make life more interesting and happy. It's the joy of finding new things, the excitement of learning a new skill, and the pleasure of connecting with others through a shared interest. This emotional richness, this expansion of personal experience, is a strong example of the main idea at work. Think about Anya. She moved from a small village to a busy city and found many restaurants and food stalls with food she had only read about. Her English was basic, just enough for daily needs. But her love for food pushed her. She started by watching cooking shows, often stopping to look up words. A recipe for a simple lemon tart seemed hard at first, with words like zest, cream, and fold. She spent hours with a dictionary, but slowly, the words started to make sense. The first tart was a little uneven, the crust a bit too brown, but it tasted wonderful. The sourness of the lemon, the sweetness of the sugar, the buttery crispness of the crust, she could finally name these feelings. She felt a strong sense of pride. She felt she had not just made a tart, but had conquered a small part of the world. This experience was not just about baking. It was about taking control, about finding her own space and happiness in a new place. Then there is Kenji, a young man who dreamed of opening his own small cafe. He loved to cook, but his English was not strong. He was drawn to recipes from other countries, especially France and Italy, which he admired for their style and deep flavors. He spent his evenings looking through cookbooks, his computer open to translation websites. He learned about the exact ways to make a bechamel sauce, understanding the importance of a roux mix of butter and flour and the gentle heat needed. He learned the skill of degreasing a pan after searing meat, a step that made his sauces much richer. He started to try things, not just following recipes, but changing them, which felt impossible before he understood English cooking words well. He started a small food blog, sharing his journey and his creations, using English to describe the delicate balance of flavors in his chicken dish or the bright freshness of his pesto. His blog gained a small but loyal group of followers, people who liked his passion and his clear, descriptive writing. Kenji's story shows how learning language, when focused on something you love like cooking, can directly help you reach important personal and work goals. It's about more than just understanding. It's about creating, talking, and hoping. This journey into the world of cooking English shows us that language is not just an idea in books. It is a living, working tool that shapes our experiences, improves our skills, and connects us to the world. Just as learning the language of recipes can change how we feel in the kitchen, understanding the details of English and create deeper connections with the people and cultures that shape our world. This leads us to explore how language can build connections in other important areas of life. 2. Understanding and following recipes. Recipes are like a special kind of language. They tell us how to use our hands and our minds. They guide us from a list of things to a finished meal. For someone learning a new language, like English, reading a recipe can feel like entering a secret place. This place has special words, clear steps, and the promise of something yummy. To be good at cooking, you must first understand this cooking language. Think about it. A recipe is not just a list of items. It is a set of directions, a story told in a very specific way. It has its own words like chop, stir, bake, and simmer. It has its own rules for how to put things in order. If you are told to add the flour to the wet things before you mix the eggs and milk, your cake might not turn out right. This exact way of telling you what to do and when is what makes a recipe work. Like any language, you need to know its special words and how they go together to truly know what it wants you to do. The summary we looked at talks about how important it is to learn new words. This is very true for cooking. Imagine you see a recipe that says, cook the onions quickly until they look a bit see-through. If cook quickly is a new word for you, you might wonder, does it mean to fry them hard? Boil them? The word see-through might also be new. Does it mean totally clear like glass? Or just a little bit? If you don't know these words, you cannot follow the directions well. You might get burnt onions or onions that are still raw. This is where learning more cooking words, as the summary says, really helps. Knowing that cook quickly means to cook fast in a little hot fat, and that see-through means a little bit clear, helps you do it the right way. The result is food that tastes better and a cook who feels more sure of themselves. Not knowing these special words can cause big problems. A recipe might say to slow cook meat. If you don't know what slow cooking is, cooking it slowly with liquid, you might try to roast it or boil it instead. This will change how the meat feels and tastes in the end. Or a recipe might ask you to cut vegetables into thin strips. If you just chop them, you won't get the thin, stick-like pieces that are best for some dishes. This affects how they cook and how they look. So, being able to learn more cooking words is not just about new words. It's about being able to do specific cooking tasks correctly, which is key to any recipe working well. Besides individual words, The order and clearness of directions in a recipe are very important. Recipes are made to be followed one step after another. Each step depends on the one before it. If the directions are not clear, or if the steps are in the wrong order, the whole process can fail. For example, a recipe might say, mix the dry things, then add the wet things. This is a clear order, but if it said, mix flour, sugar, eggs, and milk, it leaves room for guessing. Do you mix the flour and sugar first, then add the eggs and milk? Or do you put them all in at once? This lack of clearness can lead to mistakes. A well-written recipe uses clear words that tell you what to do and puts the steps in a good order. This makes it much easier for anyone to follow, no matter how much they cook. This brings us to how the ideas in the summary help with these language problems. The summary shows how important it is to understand the small differences in English. Recipes are a perfect example of where these differences matter a lot. Learning to spot action words, like mix, pour, stir, bake, is the first step. Then, knowing how these words are used in different ways is important. For example, stir gently is different from stir fast. Bake at 350 degrees is exact, but bake until golden brown needs a little more thought. It uses a look that needs you to understand descriptive words. The summaries focus on understanding the meaning, not just the words, is also very helpful here. It's not enough to know what flour means. You need to know its job in a recipe. Does it hold things together? Does it make things thicker? Is it the main part? Also, understanding how much to use is key. What is the difference between a cup, a tablespoon, and a teaspoon? And how do different ways of measuring like small amounts vs large amounts change the result? These are all parts of the recipe's language that you need to understand to be correct. Think about learning to bake bread. My first try using an English recipe was a mess. The recipe said to work the dough until it is smooth and stretchy. I didn't really understand what stretchy meant here. I worked the dough a lot, but it stayed sticky and heavy. The recipe also said to wake up the yeast. I knew what yeast was, but wake up sounded like a science word. I ended up adding the yeast right to the flour, not knowing it needed to be mixed with warm water first. The result? A heavy, flat bread that looked nothing like the picture. This experience shows the question, what specific language problems do learners have with English recipes? It's the new action words, the words that describe how something should look or feel soft, crispy, light, and the exact amounts. It's also words about food that might not be the same in other languages. For example, some spices or ways of cooking are very specific to certain places. The summary's ideas, by focusing on understanding and learning words, help with these problems. They give learners the tools to figure out these directions, to understand not just the words, but what they mean. The problems that can happen if you don't have this vocabulary and understanding are more than just a bad meal. They can cause you to feel sad, not good enough, and not want to try again. This is where building confidence comes in. When someone follows a recipe well, especially a hard one, it is a big success. It shows they can understand difficult directions and do them right. This success in the kitchen can then help in other parts of their life, making them feel more sure of their ability to learn and do things. It makes them want to explore more, try new recipes, and experiment with different foods and ways of cooking. Going beyond just understanding the words, knowing the small differences in recipe language helps you cook more naturally. Phrases like add salt until it tastes good or cook until it is just soft are not exact amounts. They ask the cook to use their senses and judgment. This needs a deeper understanding of the foods and the cooking. It means knowing what too much salt tastes like, or seeing when a vegetable is cooked just right. not too much or not enough. This level of understanding makes cooking go from a task to a fun and creative thing. It's the difference between just following orders and truly knowing how to make something tasty. The summary's focus on understanding the main idea of what is being said is very important here. It's about understanding the basic rules of cooking that a recipe is trying to share. For instance, why does a recipe say to let dough rest? It's not just a random step. It lets the stretchy part of the dough relax, making it easier to work with. Understanding this why makes the direction more meaningful and less like a strict rule. This deeper understanding allows for changes. If a recipe says bake for 20-25 minutes, a cook who knows what they are doing, seeing how it looks, and knowing why it's baking can tell when it's ready, even if it's not exactly at 20 minutes. This journey of understanding recipes, from figuring out individual words to knowing the basic cooking rules, is a great example of how learning language helps you in real life. It shows that learning English is not just about schoolwork. It's about being able to join in the world more, enjoy new things, and connect with others through shared activities like cooking and eating. Following recipe directions well not only leads to good food, but also helps you enjoy the food more. This often means being able to say what makes the food good. This skill helps us talk about tastes and textures, changing us from people who just cook to people who really appreciate food. 3. Describing food tastes. When we talk about food, we often start with simple questions. Is it sweet? Is it salty? But the world of taste is much bigger and more exciting than just those few words. Think about the difference between a plain sugar cookie and a rich, dark chocolate cake. Both are sweet, but they feel and taste very different, right? This guide helps us learn to talk about what we eat in a more detailed way. It's like learning a new language, but this language is all about our senses. This guide suggests that to truly understand and enjoy food, and to get the most out of learning English in this way, we need to go beyond those first, simple flavors. It shows us words that capture the small changes and turns in taste. For example, instead of just saying something is a little sour, we can learn to say it's tangy. A tangy taste is often sharp and bright, making your mouth water a little. Think of a squeeze of fresh lime on fish, or a good salad dressing. It wakes up your mouth. Then there's that wonderful, deep, satisfying taste you find in things like slow-cooked meats, old cheese, or mushrooms. This is often called umami. It's a word from Japan, and it's like a savory, meaty flavor that makes food taste more complex and delicious. It's not just salty. It's a fullness that makes you want another bite. Learning these special words, like tangy and umami, helps us to see and taste food in a new way. It's about noticing the small details, the little sparks of flavor that make a dish special. We also learn about the opposite of sweet. Sometimes food has a sharp, almost biting taste. This is bitter. Coffee is a common example of a bitter taste, and so are dark green vegetables like kale. While we might not always look for bitterness, it plays a very important part in balancing other flavors. A bit of bitterness can make sweet things more interesting, and it can cut through richness. Think about how a bitter dark chocolate can be so satisfying. And of course, there's sour. This is different from tangy. Sour is a stronger, puckering feeling, like biting into a lemon or tasting plain yogurt. It's a clean, bright taste that can be refreshing. Many fruits are sour, and it's also a key flavor in foods that have been fermented. This guide also helps us understand spicy. This isn't really a taste in the same way that sweet or salty is. It's more of a feeling, a heat that spreads through your mouth. We have words like mild, warm, hot, and fiery to describe different levels of spice. This feeling can come from chilies, pepper, or ginger, and it adds another whole layer to food. And what about tastes that remind us of the earth, like roots or mushrooms? These are often called earthy. It's a grounding flavor, deep and sometimes a little musky. It connects us to nature, and it's an important part of many vegetable dishes. But describing food isn't just about what our tongue tastes. It's also about how food feels in our mouth. This is what we call texture. These descriptive words are just as important as taste words. Imagine biting into a perfectly ripe peach. It's soft and juicy, but it also has a slight fuzz on its skin. Now think about biting into a crisp apple. That satisfying crunch is a texture. Words like creamy describe something smooth and rich, like ice cream or a good sauce. It melts in your mouth. Then there's crunchy, which is that sharp, brittle sound and feeling when you bite into something like a potato chip or a fresh carrot. Chewy is for foods that take a bit of effort to break down, like a piece of dried meat or some types of bread. It's a satisfying resistance. On the other hand, flaky describes something that breaks apart into thin layers like a croissant or a good pastry. It's delicate and light. And smooth is for things that have a very even surface, like pudding or a well-blended soup. It glides over your tongue. These texture words help us paint a fuller picture of the food. A dish might be described as creamy and smooth or crunchy with a hint of spice. This guide uses an interesting comparison, learning to describe food like a food critic. This is where we move from just saying it's good to explaining why it's good. A food critic doesn't just say a steak is tasty, they might say it's perfectly cooked with a tender, juicy inside, with a rich, beefy flavor made better by a light peppery crust. They use specific words for taste and texture, and they also talk about how these elements work together. They understand that a dish is more than just its separate parts. This food critic way of describing means we're not just finding flavors, we're understanding how complex they are. We're noticing how a sharp, tangy sauce balances a rich, fatty meat, or how a crunchy topping makes a soft, creamy dessert more exciting. We're learning to appreciate the cook's skill in putting these elements together. This is a key idea in our learning. Looking closely at central ideas and concepts shown in the summary. Learning these descriptive words is a direct way to engage with this key idea, as it allows us to understand the subtle, central ideas about flavor and experience that the summary presents. The practical use of this language is huge. Think about reading a recipe. If it says add a little cayenne pepper for a gentle warmth, you know what gentle warmth means. But if it says add a bit of paprika for a smoky note and a touch of heat, you can understand the different things each spice adds. Or imagine a recipe for a sauce that asks for a rich, creamy texture with a bit of lemon zest. You can immediately imagine what that sauce should be like. Without these words, recipes can be confusing, and the final dish might not turn out as planned. Beyond recipes, this descriptive language makes conversations about food better. Instead of just saying, "I liked that meal," you can say, "That pasta dish was wonderful. The sauce was so creamy and savory, and the little bits of toasted bread on top added a great crunch." This makes your opinion much more interesting and helpful to others. If you're asking for a recommendation, you can be more specific. "I'm looking for something with a bit of spice, but not too hot. Something with a rich, deep flavor." This helps the server or friend understand exactly what you want. This ability to explain sensory experiences is what truly opens up a deeper appreciation for food. It changes simple eating from a basic need into an insightful and enjoyable experience. It's about moving from just eating food to actively paying attention to it, understanding its small differences, and enjoying its complexities. Let me share a short story to show this. A few years ago, I was trying to make a simple tomato soup from scratch. The recipe said to cook until the tomatoes are soft and the flavors have mixed. I followed the steps, but the soup tasted okay. It was fine, but it was missing something. It was just tomato why. I felt like I was missing a key idea that the recipe was trying to share. Later, I was reading a food blog where a cook described a similar soup. They used words like the tomatoes should break down into a rich, slightly sweet base, with a bright, tangy finish from a splash of vinegar. They also mentioned how important it is to build layers of flavor by cooking onions and garlic until they were sweet and fragrant before adding the tomatoes. Suddenly, it made sense. My soup was just tomatoes. It wasn't rich or sweet in the way the cook described. It lacked that tangy finish. I realized I didn't have the words to understand the purpose behind the recipe. The cook's description wasn't just about taste. It was about the process and the result. The next time I made tomato soup, I paid attention to those words. I cooked my onions and garlic until they were truly sweet and smelled wonderful. I let the tomatoes cook down, imagining them becoming rich. And at the end, I added a tiny splash of red wine vinegar. The difference was amazing. The soup was no longer just tomato wine. It was deep, with a lovely sweetness from the cooked vegetables and that bright, tangy note cut through the richness. Perfectly. It tasted like a dish that had been carefully made, not just thrown together. This experience showed me how important these descriptive words are. They are not just extra words, they are the keys that unlock the deeper meaning and enjoyment of food. They help us understand the how and the why behind a dish. They allow us to connect with the creator's intention and to make that magic happen ourselves. It's about moving from a basic understanding to a more expert-like appreciation, where we can truly taste and explain the subtle, central ideas that make food delicious. This is exactly what this guide encourages us to do, to become more aware and appreciative through language. By learning to describe food tastes and textures, we are not just increasing our vocabulary, we are increasing our ability to experience and understand the world around us, one delicious bite at a time. This deeper understanding of taste and texture is a fundamental part of the key idea of looking at central ideas, as it directly relates to how we sense and appreciate the core parts of any food creation. 4. Describing food textures. When we talk about food, we often think about how it tastes. But another sense is very important for how we like our food, how it feels in our mouths. This is called the texture of food. The words we have been looking at show us how using special words for these feelings can change how we cook and enjoy our meals. It's like learning a secret code that helps us enjoy every bite more. Think about it. A good steak is not just about its yummy taste. It's also about how it feels to chew, that little bit of give before you get to the soft meat. Or think about a potato chip. It's the crispiness that makes it so good. These feelings, these textures are a big part of eating. They can make food exciting, nice, or even not so good. The words we've studied show us how important it is to be able to talk about these feelings. We can say more than just it was good, we can say why it was good. Being able to describe texture is a main idea in what we've read. It's a deep look at a central thought that helps us understand how we talk about food. The words we've seen show us a world where learning special words for textures can open up new chances. Imagine trying to tell someone the difference between soft mashed potatoes and a firm, chewy piece of bread. Without the right words, it's hard to share that feeling. The words encourage us to learn more. We learn words like crispy, which means something is dry and breaks easily with a sharp sound, like a cracker. Creamy means something is smooth and rich, melting in your mouth like pudding. Then there's chewy, which means you have to work at it a bit, like a piece of candy. Fluffy describes something light and airy, like a soft cloud of whipped cream. Smooth is the opposite of lumpy, flowing easily like yogurt. Crunchy is like crispy, but usually means a harder, bigger break, like biting into an apple. Tender means it's soft and easy to cut or chew, like a slow-cooked piece of meat. And gummy means sticky and a little tough to chew, like some candies. Each of these words makes a clear picture in our minds, helping us imagine the food before we even taste it. This focus on texture is not just about sounding smart. It really changes how much we enjoy our food. We often like certain textures a lot. We might want the crunch of a salad because it feels fresh and lively, or the smoothness of ice cream because it feels comforting and nice. The word suggests that understanding why we like certain textures helps us understand ourselves as people who eat. Why do we like the pop of popcorn or the slight chewiness of pasta that's cooked just right? It's because these textures feel good to our senses in special ways. The crispiness of fried chicken, for example, is a big reason why people like it. It's not just the taste, it's the sound and feel of that first bite. In the same way, the smooth, cool feeling of ice cream on a hot day is as much about its texture as its sweetness. These are not just random likes, they are feelings that our brains enjoy. Besides just liking the textures we find, knowing these words can be very helpful when we cook. When a recipe says to cook something until it's tender, knowing what tender feels like in your mouth helps you know when to stop cooking. This stops food from being too dry and hard or not cooked enough and still tough. The word suggests that by learning these texture words, we become better cooks. We can follow instructions better and, with practice, even start to try new things. If you want to make a cake that's extra fluffy, you'll pay more attention to how you mix the batter and how long you bake it. If you want a pie crust that's perfectly crispy, you'll change your oven heat or baking time to get that result. How you cook food also changes its texture a lot. Baking can make things crispy or tender. Frying often makes things crispy. Boiling can make things tender or sometimes mushy if you cook them too long. Steaming can keep food delicately tender. Each cooking method is a tool to shape the final texture of the food. Let me tell you a story that shows this. For many years, I had trouble making good bread. My loaves were often too hard inside, or sometimes tough and dry. I followed recipes, but the results were never quite right. Then, I started paying more attention to how good bread was described. I read about the chewy inside of a good loaf, the crisp crust that breaks when you cut it, and the airy middle with holes. These were not just words. They started to create a picture in my mind. One day, I was trying to make a simple focaccia bread. The recipe said it should be slightly chewy and have a soft, yielding inside. Before, I just wanted it to be cooked. This time, I focused on the feeling. I made sure my dough was kneaded well, making it stretchy, which helps create chewiness. I didn't bake it too long, stopping when the crust was golden brown and made a light sound when tapped, but the inside still felt a little soft when I gently pressed it. When I took it out of the oven, it looked good, but the real test was when I cut it. The crust broke with a nice, gentle crackle, not a hard crunch. The inside was soft and had those nice holes, and when I took a bite, it was just right. A little bit of chew before melting into a soft, tasty bite. It wasn't tough, it wasn't dry, it was exactly what I had imagined. That simple focaccia, made with an understanding of its texture, was amazing. It showed me how clear words, when learned and used, could turn a simple cooking task into a successful food creation. This was a direct use of the main idea, a deep look at how specific descriptive words, in this case for texture, help us understand better and cook better. The words we've studied help us understand that food is an experience for all our senses. Texture is not extra, it's a main part that changes how we taste and how happy we are with our food. When we can talk about these textures clearly, we feel more connected to the food we eat and become better at cooking it. Being able to describe textures with accuracy is a big step in learning the language of food. It helps us understand and follow cooking instructions better. So, what specific words for food textures are mentioned or suggested in what we've read, and what do they mean for cooking? While the text might not list every single texture word, it strongly shows their importance by talking about food. Words like crispy, creamy, chewy, fluffy, smooth, crunchy, tender, and gummy are all suggested when talking about how certain foods are made or what they are like. For example, if the text talks about fried foods, the words crispy or crunchy are naturally part of it. When talking about dairy products or pureed vegetables, creamy and smooth are important words. Cooking meat or vegetables to a certain point naturally brings up the idea of tender. Even the texture of certain candies or baked goods can be called chewy or maybe gummy. Each of these words is important in cooking because they describe the physical feeling of food in the mouth, guiding both the cook and the eater. Crispy means it breaks easily and makes a sound, like a fried onion ring. Creamy means it's rich and flows smoothly, like good ice cream. Chewy means you need to work at it a bit, like a piece of jerky. Fluffy is light and airy, like a perfectly baked cake. Smooth is the opposite of lumpy, like a fine sauce. Crunchy is a harder break than crispy, like nuts. Tender means it's soft and easy to eat, like a well-cooked piece of fish. Gummy is sticky and a little tough to chew, like some candies. And how does the text suggest that learning to describe textures can make someone a better cook or help them understand recipes better? The text's focus on looking closely at main ideas suggests that clear words lead to clear actions. When a recipe writer describes a texture they want, they are giving important information that guides the cook. If a cookie recipe says to bake them until they are crisp around the edges but still soft in the middle, a cook who understands these texture words will know exactly what to look for. They will be able to tell when the cookies are done by looking and feeling, not just by watching a clock. This leads to more consistent and successful results. Also, understanding texture descriptions helps a cook fix problems. If a dish turns out too tough, the cook can think about whether they cooked it too long, which often makes food tough. If a sauce is lumpy, the cook can see that the smooth texture was not achieved. This learning process, driven by understanding texture words, is very helpful for improving cooking skills. It lets cooks move from just following instructions to truly understanding why they are doing them, allowing them to change and create their own dishes with confidence. This is the heart of the main idea at work. The detailed look at how precise words, especially for texture, improve practical cooking knowledge and skill. Just as understanding the feel of food is very important, so is understanding its flavor. By learning the language of texture, we have prepared ourselves to look more closely at the details of taste, unlocking the full range of how we can describe food. Conclusion: we are now at the end of our journey. Let's think about the exciting path we walked together. We wanted to find the main ideas in our talk, and I hope you learned useful things. We looked closely at one conversation to understand it well. Our aim was to make these talks easy to understand and useful. As we went through the parts of our talk, one idea was always the most important. It was the heart of everything. We call this the main idea. For us, the main idea is the strong link between learning English and enjoying cooking and food more. It's about how learning certain English skills helps you understand recipes, talk about tastes, and really love food. Remember when we talked about how knowing phrases like cook until golden is not just about knowing the words, but understanding how to cook. This is the main idea at work. And learning words for food tastes and textures like smooth, crunchy, or sharp helps you with this main idea by giving you the words for food. Wanting to talk about food like an expert is about being able to explain what you taste and feel, which is a big part of the main idea. This main idea is not just a thought, it's what makes our learning happen. It's the bridge that connects learning English to a real and fun skill. By focusing on this main idea, we saw how learning English can be more than just learning words. It becomes a way to enjoy things more and understand them better. First, we looked at understanding recipes. This showed us that learning English is not just for talking, it's for doing things. Being able to follow a recipe easily is a result of using the main idea. When you can read a recipe and know what cook slowly means, you are not only better at English, but also better at cooking. This skill is at the center of our main idea. Also, when we learned to describe food tastes and textures, it made the main idea stronger. Learning words like rich, sour, or soft lets you share your food experiences better, connect with people over meals, and even enjoy food more yourself. Being able to talk about food like an expert is a great way to use the main idea, turning eating into an active and shared experience. Learning more cooking words is the clearest way to use the main idea. Every new word you learn, from cut into thin strips to make into a soft brown sugar, helps you cook, understand, and talk about food with more skill. Learning these words helps you get the good results promised by the main idea. So, everything we studied, from reading recipes to describing food, shows the main idea. Learning English helps you cook and enjoy food more. The things we learned are not just for reading, they are for doing. As you continue to cook, remember the power of the main idea. Look for chances to use your new words, to read recipes with confidence, and to share what you think about the tasty things you eat. Whether you are trying a new recipe, talking about a meal with friends, or just looking at a cookbook, let the main idea help you learn and enjoy more. You now understand better how language and food go together and how to use this connection to grow and have fun. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope you find many delicious things and have great talks as you keep exploring food and language. Happy cooking and happy learning!